But I think that leads us nicely into a discussion about a second Greek term you brought up early on, and that is the nous. Because, and I could be wrong here, but I think there's an important kind of connection here as we talk about mystery and what it is even to know
Mhm.
the faith, along with this concept of the nous, which again is going to be unfamiliar for a lot of people. So,
Yes,
could you
yes,
talk about
yes,
the nous a bit?
yes. Nous simply means mind, and that is a term from ancient Greek, of course. And St. Paul uses it when he says we have the mind of Christ. That's the word nous. But he doesn't mean in terms of deductive reasoning. Now, I want to be clear. It's not that the Orthodox Church is irrational or that we're against knowledge or education or science. Not that at all. It's that we are convinced, because this was the apostolic understanding, that you cannot come to know God through the operation of the human mind. Now, the nous is something different. I'm talking about diania, which is discursive reasoning. You can learn about God, you can learn about the scriptures and be far from God. If that's all you're doing is trying to understand God in terms of your concepts, mental constructs, okay? So, what is the nous? The nous for the fathers of the church, for the early Christians, is that part of the human person. They call it mind, but they don't mean intellectual reasoning. They mean the element of the human person which God gave us to have a relationship with Him. Now, we don't have a relationship with God by learning things about God, just like have maybe you have a girlfriend in your life and you don't just want to learn things about her. You want to have a relationship. That means you spend time with her. You want to get to know her. I don't know. Are you married or and I'm not even sure. So you
I'm
want to get to
engaged.
know her. You're engaged. Well, congratulations. So if you only wanted to understand her intellectually, that wouldn't be much of a relationship, but you spend time together. You want to develop a deep connection with her. You want to do the things for her that make her happy, that please her, these kinds of things. So this has more to do with having a relationship with God. But how do we relate to God? Not through our discursive reasoning, but through doing things that please the Lord, through our prayer, through our acts of humility, acts of kindness for others, by conforming our behavior. This is where Phronima connects with this idea of nous. So nous is the way we come to know God. Now, I know must have had people talk about the fall of mankind and how Orthodoxy understands the fall differently than the West. We don't believe in complete depravity. That's something that Calvin dreamed up, okay? The early church never thought that we were totally depraved, okay? The early church said, and in terms of the nous, that our nous was darkened by the fall. That means that we need to be illumined by the light of Christ. And so baptism was called in the early church holy illumination. It wasn't the end. It wasn't you're baptized, now you're saved, you don't have to do anything else. It was the beginning of our process of enlightenment, of illumination. So we come to know God primarily not through the operation of the mind, but through illumination of the soul. And so the more we behave in a manner that contributes to that, the more the nous becomes illumined, the more it becomes receptive to divine insight. And this is what the nous is. And this is it, but it's just like everything else we've been talking about, it can't be defined. It can't be explained. It's not subject. That's why we don't have systematic theology. We have dogmatics. And then we know as Orthodox Christians the limits of what we can say, and we never venture beyond that. That's why in sort of when there were discussions, ecumenical dialogues, or even much earlier when the Catholic Church was trying to get the Orthodox to unite with them, they could never understand us because they always said, well, this is the definition and this is rational and this is logical. And we said, we don't care if it's logical or rational. That's not what the early church taught. The early church never taught purgatory. They never taught the Immaculate Conception of the Virgin Mary. They never taught the infallibility of the Pope. We don't care how logical it seems to you, how rational it is. That's not what the early church taught. The early church taught that we come to knowledge of God through illumination of the nous. But even most Orthodox Christians, this is a very high level concept. Orthodox Christians don't talk about the nous very much unless they're theologians.